CRPGs are either my top 1 or top 2 favorite genres of all time, and Baldur's Gate is a masterclass when it comes to CRPGs. Long before Baldur's Gate 3 took the world by storm in 2023, pretty much claiming all of the awards including Game of the Year at the Game Awards, Baldur's Gate 1 released in 1998 and cemented many of the most iconic mechanics that we now praise in so many RPGs. They all stand on the shoulders of this giant, the quintessential game of the Platinum Age of CRPGs, as described by Professor Matt Barton in his incredible book Dungeons and Desktops, The History of Computer Role-Playing Games. Baldur's Gate was published by Interplay and developed by Bioware, and it's to this classic game that we dedicate today's video. Hey guys, it's Harry. I've been a game designer and producer for the past 11 years, and today we dive deep into the history of RPGs and one of the most iconic franchises in PC gaming. Baldur's Gate is set in the Forgotten Realms, the world of Dungeons and Dragons, the most recognized RPG setting of all time, and it uses the rules of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd Edition, also known as AD&D, which today gets some mixed feeling from players, but it's the system that you need to master if you want to be any good at Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate is a real-time with pause RPG that makes you create and control one main character in the modes of Fallout 1, released the year prior. Most games from previous years had the player create a full party of characters before venturing forth, but through the 90s, it was becoming more established to have a single main character with additional companions. Most of the time, however, those companions were simply soldiers in your army, not fully fleshed people. Well, that was about to change, and Baldur's Gate presents you with preset NPC characters called companions that you meet throughout your journey and can take with your party through the world, solving dozens and dozens of quests. The companions in Baldur's Gate are rich, intricate, nuanced, and they are so well written and fun to have around that this is gonna inspire a whole generation of games to come. Titles like Dragon Age, Mass Effect, Pillars of Eternity, the Divinity series, and a lot more. A key feature in Baldur's Gate is that, alongside with the main quest, there are tons of side quests for you to complete, both given by random NPCs on the map in the various towns, as well as by your own companions. They have their own agendas and objectives, and most will request something of you, and they can even leave your party if you do not follow through with their demands. Responsiveness and consequence is another key feature in Baldur's Gate. Many characters do feel like real people, and they respond to your dialogue options and choices accordingly. As a good old style CRPG, Baldur's Gate does not hold your hand at all. If you choose the wrong option or if you confront the wrong people, they will fight you, and most likely kill you, because the game does not hold back in difficulty. Even the core rules difficulty, which uses the default AD&D system and would represent the regular difficulty, is harder than most RPGs you encounter then or now. Baldur's Gate is the first game to use the highly acclaimed and iconic Infinity Engine, which would give life to so many classic RPGs thereafter, like Icewind Dale 1 and 2, Baldur's Gate 2, considered by many the best RPG of all time, and Planescape Torment, another cult classic that deserves its own video. The Infinity Engine was really a key choice from the developers, but also a classic path back in the day. There was no Unity or Unreal Engine to provide developers with a huge and refined toolset. Instead, the engineers had to craft their own game engine from scratch, which was very costly. And because of that, it was only expected that a team would continue to use the same engine for as many games as possible, be it sequels or entirely new games. It was also common for the studios to sell the license of their engines to other studios that would then repurpose it for different games, like it happened with Quake and Unreal Tournament, both very successful FPS games from the 90s. Moreover, each engine was very specialized in a single type of game, like it was the case with the Doom engine, used to create Doom 1 and 2, as well as Hexen, Heretic, and other of id Software's games. In Baldur's Gate, you control your group from an isometric top-down view of the world, and you get to explore the map almost as you please, uncovering different areas behind the fog of war, a resource also very common in RTS games. Baldur's Gate can in a way be seen as a mixture of traditional turn-based RPGs and real-time strategy games, especially when you consider that it was real-time, but each character in combat had their own turns calculated behind the scenes, with cooldowns for each attack and action. In order for you to get to new areas of the map, new towns and locations, you had to physically traverse the intermediate areas, usually through the wilderness, where you get to fight a lot of foes. And believe me, each engagement might be your last. Baldur's Gate is quite unforgiving with new players, even at lower difficulties. You really need to prepare your party and have your potions and spells ready with you. Otherwise, one critical hit from an ordinary enemy might end life for one of your companions, or your main character, in which case your game will be over instantly. In many modern games, you may have the luxury of entering the scene unannounced, totally unaware of the hazards that you find along the way, and you can choose whatever strategies, skills, and spells you want to best represent your character and roleplay it freely. That is not going to be the case for Baldur's Gate, at least at the core difficulty and up. You have to have a basic understanding of the AD&D rule set and create a decent build for your character at the very minimum. Otherwise, you'll really be asking the gods for forgiveness and confess all of your sins. Like I did, trying a dozen times to kill the most vicious foe, well, a polar bear, that killed my entire party over and over again, no matter how many times I tried. That is Baldur's Gate at its finest, not for the faint of heart. But exploring the map feels rewarding, as each enemy might give you some powerful loot or simply gold coins for you to continue your quests with new and better gear. The history behind Baldur's Gate's production happens when Bioware founders met Interplay producer Fergus Urquhart, who would later become CEO of Obsidian Entertainment, makers of Pillars of Eternity. Actually, the game that fully introduced me to the Western CRPG genre. In the 90s, I was very hooked on several Japanese RPGs like Final Fantasy, Xenogears, Chrono Trigger, and some Western RPGs as well, like Diablo 1 and 2. But the game that got me mesmerized in this old-style, narrative-heavy, real-time with pause CRPGs was Pillars of Eternity, and I have stayed in love with CRPGs ever since. So Bioware founders had created Shattered Steel, a mech simulation game, and were now pitching a project they called Battleground Infinity, an RPG they said it was, quote, like Dungeons & Dragons. Interplay had recently acquired the rights to create D&D games from TSR, the original publisher of the tabletop Dungeons & Dragons. So Fergus asked Bioware, why not creating a Dungeons & Dragons game instead? That was a yes, and after some negotiations, the concept for Baldur's Gate was born, and from Battleground Infinity came the Infinity Engine. Baldur's Gate released on December 21st, 1998, and it was incredibly well received. It was the game that popularized the real-time with pause mechanic, even though it wasn't the first to feature it, giving a new level of strategy to RPGs, which were mostly turn-based at the time, while also keeping the adrenaline of real-time battles. Even though, you will be pausing the game at every half a second, keeping the adrenaline in check. You really need to give commands to your companions that often, or you risk having them perform silly actions all the time. Even with the enhanced edition created by Beamdog in 2013, with the various graphical improvements and enhanced companion AI, if you let your party members act by themselves with no pause, the probability of failure goes up substantially. I have lost count of my wizard characters taking the forefront of battle instead of keeping distance, letting the tank players take the front. Even if you adjust their formation and fine-tune the AI behavior, that will not totally fix the issue. So pausing the game constantly is a necessity. And in my experience, that's not only in Baldur's Gate, but virtually any game that uses the system. But we can argue that is the beauty of the system itself. You are the commander guiding your party to success, and if you tactically position your units and give them the proper tools and spells, You can see them obliterating the enemies, which is all damn satisfying. Baldur's Gate truly captured the essence of D&D adventures with a deep, intricate storyline, finely crafted world building, tons of dialogue choices for you to express yourself, and most of all, remarkable characters, full of personalities and quirks, each following their own quests. When you play Baldur's Gate, you have this acute sense of dealing with real people, and that's a huge part of the appeal of the game. Characters will react to your actions and words. They will leave your party if they don't agree with some decisions that you make, or simply if they don't like you, if you're inclined for good while they are inherently evil. And they would say that all the time during gameplay. The voice lines are amazing. Few games even today reach that level of mastery in character development. If Super Mario Bros. Was a masterclass in level design for 2D platformers, Baldur's Gate is the undisputed boss when it comes to story and character development. Beamdog released the enhanced edition of Baldur's Gate in 2013, and they followed it up with the enhanced edition for Baldur's Gate 2. One of Beamdog's founders, Trent Oster, was one of the original founders at Bioware, and he also worked on games like Neverwinter Nights. So yeah, it was a very high level team working on these enhanced editions, and that's why they did an amazing job bringing Baldur's Gate to more modern audiences. And that's why today you can play Baldur's Gate at 4K with several quality of life improvements. I mean, I always like to play the classic games in their most vanilla version as much as I can, but we cannot deny that having more quality of life, especially in the user interface, helps smooth the experience for most players, so they can focus on fighting the incredible roster of enemies in the game instead of fighting the game's bugs and pathing. In recent years, we have been living in an era of remakes and remasters, capitalizing on nostalgia and many times not focusing on being the most innovative of all. But regardless of the criticism that I can personally have for many of those remakes, we cannot understate the importance of teams like Beamdog working to preserve classic games, bringing them to new audiences, capturing the essence of what made those games great, maintaining the original experience as close as possible while also improving upon it. After all, our memories of the good old days and the games that marked our childhood are incredibly biased. Many times we simply overlooked the several problems that the games had. In the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, many games were released with tons of bugs, and back in the day, providing quick patches and updates was not super feasible for most projects. The internet wasn't something that you could leverage as easily as you can today. Today, it's a very common practice for games to have a day one patch. Can you imagine that? You release a game one day, you quickly grab player feedback and any crashing bugs that they report, and you can follow up in a couple of days with another build, submit it to Steam and Xbox and PlayStation all at the same time, in order to fix the bugs players reported 72 hours prior. That is crazy and unthinkable 2 decades ago. If you went crazy playing Baldur's Gate 3 and thought it was the best thing you ever touched with your digital hands, you must try Baldur's Gate 1. Yes, it's gonna be clunky at times and you need to open yourself up to a new experience, as the game does not hold your hand very long, if at all. And you need to put substantial effort into understanding the systems and how to build your character for success. But take my word for it, it absolutely pays off. Baldur's Gate is undeniably a top-tier CRPG, and once you find your footing in the Sword Coast part of the Forgotten Realms, ready to uncover all of its mysteries, I guarantee you it'll be a highlight of your gaming life. I hope you guys enjoyed this brief history of Baldur's Gate, and let me know in the comments what other games you'd like to see here, like Baldur's Gate 2, Neverwinter Nights, Dragon Age. There are so many incredible possibilities. I would love to continue making more videos like this, so if you guys enjoyed it, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.